Welcome to Life with Strings Attached. I'm your host, Jamie Gale. Today's episode was recorded live in Anaheim, California at the NAMM Show as part of the 125th anniversary of NAMM within the 10th annual Boutique Guitar Showcase. As part of these special anniversary events, I moderated a 3-part series of panel discussions on the unwritten future of guitar. Our panelists are some of the most influential people in the guitar business today. I hope you enjoy this special 3-part series on Life with Strings Attached. This is the third and final part of our 3-part series on the unwritten future of guitar, focused on experience filters. The 20th and 21st century guitar does not stand alone. Unlike the 19th century Spanish guitar, it has picks, strings of various materials, electronic components, and more. Each one affects the way the instrument responds, sounds, and ultimately your entire experience is filtered through your choice of these accessories. Let's explore the impact of the many interchangeable parts of the guitar experience, both onboard and outboard, from strings, pickups, and picks to pedals, amplification, modelers, and more. Our first panelist is Francisco Cresp. Francisco Cresp is the co-founder and chief product officer of Neural DSP, a music technology company redefining modern guitar and bass tone through advanced digital signal processing. Born in Chile and based in Helsinki, Finland, he's played a key role in shaping Neural DSP's product vision and industry impact. Under his leadership, the company has reshaped expectations around sound quality, realism, and user experience in digital amplification and effects. Neural DSP's flagship hardware platform, the Quad Cortex, has been the best-selling amp modeler device in the world since its launch in 2021. Our second panelist is Larry Fishman. Larry Fishman is a musician, engineer, and inventor, and the founder of Fishman Transducers, holder of 47-plus patents. His innovations, from acoustic pickups to Fluence technology, have shaped modern instrument design used by leading brands worldwide. He also co-founded Parker Guitars with the late Ken Parker in the early 1990s, contributing engineering and design input to the innovative guitar designs. Our third panelist is Chris Griffiths. Chris Griffiths is the Chief Sales Officer and Director of Innovation at D'Addario, the world's largest manufacturer of musical instrument accessories. In his role, Chris leads global sales while also driving innovation across new product development, engineering, manufacturing, and customer loyalty and experience. Chris got his first job in a guitar shop at the age of 16 and has been in the industry ever since. He started a custom guitar building and repair shop at 19, started Garrison Guitars at 26, ran Gibson Guitars Canada at 33, and then went on to oversee Washburn and Parker Guitars before starting a consulting practice and eventually joined D'Addario full-time in 2016. Our fourth panelist is Eli Lester. Eli Lester is the owner and CEO of Two Rock Amplifiers and Divided by 13, and a lifelong guitarist whose work is grounded in the belief that great tone is built by ear, by feel, and by the hands. Alongside co-owner Max Skinner, Lester takes a deeply hands-on approach, remaining closely involved at the bench, voicing circuits, refining response, and shaping the subtle details that define how an amplifier reacts in the real world. For Lester, innovation is not about abandoning tradition, but using it as a foundation, honoring what works, questioning what doesn't, and building tools that support the unwritten future of the guitar experience. I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion with my esteemed colleagues. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did.
What an incredible group of people with an incredible set of experience here on the stage. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here with us to discuss the unwritten future of guitar. Chris, D'Addario, is there anyone who doesn't have a D'Addario something in their lives in the guitar industry? I think it's maybe the most prolific company that possibly exists in our industry. However, D'Addario is so familiar to us, I get the feeling that people take often these things for granted. Having been a music store retailer and a professional touring musician in my life, I love experimenting. I love moving from one pick to the other, string gauges, flat wounds, round wounds, all different materials, and each one of these get to shape my experience on the guitar. I remember selling people musical instruments who couldn't decide between two guitars. I said, "What pick are you using?" They showed me. I said, "No, this pick, that guitar." They played it and went, "Oh my God." It changed it for them. And so, but you guys do this over so many products. I would love to hear some insight from the innovations officer as to how you approach the human experience and what your consciousness is of how that's going to affect the outcomes and filter the experience for the musician.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. You talk about the history of guitar going back so far. I think the original interface of a guitar player is obviously the strings, and you talk about transitioning from gut strings to nylon to steel. D'Addario has never taken the responsibility that we have to maximize that interface and that opportunity for granted. And that's why we built, a company based on innovation. And that's why, to the point you made earlier, we have 6,000 SKUs in our portfolio, over 1,000 different ways that we make guitar strings. And I think that really demonstrates our commitment to understanding that different guitars need a different approach, and that a change in an alloy or a change in a string construction technique can have a significant outcome in the player's experience. And you used an example of a guitar pick, trying to sell a guitar using the pick as the differentiator for the player's experience in that moment to help them make a purchasing decision. I think we've all experienced that when we interface with our favorite guitars, and how sometimes you can pick up your favorite guitar, the strings need to be changed, and you're playing it, you're sort of too lazy to change it. But in the back of your mind, that you've got a compromised experience, right? And that if you do change the strings, it opens up the tone that exists in the instrument in the first place. And so understanding that nuance that musicians experience leads us to be constantly experimenting, and it leads us to have a very high level of curiosity, even after all these years of making strings, as to what can we do next and what can we do differently. Even the tension between the strings. So you might use the exact same alloy that you're used to, but if you change the core wire and you change the tension with which you apply the wrap wire, you can have technically using the same materials and have a very different feel or a very different acoustic outcome. So D'Addario really has been tireless in its pursuit of experimenting and allowing musicians at the end of the day to decide what works for them. And that's why you find in your own guitar collection, you might have a favorite set of strings that works beautifully on one guitar, but it doesn't necessarily bring out the best in a different instrument, whether it be a body style or a completely different manufacturing technique. So that's why we are so committed to innovation, and that's why we're constantly experimenting, because we take that responsibility so seriously as literally the very first touch point between you and your instrument.
And I've been in the D'Addario factory and the D'Addario lab, where your acoustic engineers have shown me the machines they had to invent to create to be able to make the tests in which they needed to test. Mm-hmm. It's really an incredible commitment, and everyone there is really genuinely very curious and committed to what they're doing. It's an inspiration. I love it.
Great.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Eli, Two Rock Amplifiers. Everybody, the Boutique Guitar Showcase goes on tour to stores at 25 cities across 12 countries and 3 continents every single year. And anybody I know who is trying to inventory Two Rock, it's never a problem trying to sell their Two Rocks. It's trying to inventory their Two Rocks. Has nothing but great things to say about it. And I know many wonderful guitar players in the world who are some of the pickiest people I know, which is why we get along so well, who are playing Two Rock amplifiers. But it's not just Two Rock. It's Two Rock. It's divided by 13, and you're in there making those tweaks all the time. How do you sort of view the experience of the musician and your role in helping them sort of filter through that?
Well, thanks for having me here, Jamie. So much about it is the feel. And a lot of guys, it's how the amplifier feels, how it reacts with your guitar. If it inspires you to want to play it, you're going to play guitar more, you're going to play better live, you're going to enjoy it. We want to be able to tell if you're playing a maple neck or a rosewood neck. And it's all those little nuances and tweaks that elevate the instrument, because the amplifier is an instrument as well and gets you that next level. And we're still playing with transformer design and material thicknesses and materials for chassis and having special components and capacitors built for us to our spec, that it never stops tweaking and tinkering along. And one thing we do vacuum tube analog circuitry and design, making it reliable so you can travel all around the world with it and have it work night after night and be consistent, is a very important thing to us. And we manufacture and build everything in-house.
Fantastic. And Eli, if I may sell you out for just a moment, you're a scientist. You've been working as a scientist for decades. You're, is it a chemical engineer or materials engineer?
Tribologist with lubricants, yes.
Yeah, right. And so what does that bring to your understanding of the amplifiers as far as perhaps materials and energy and movement? Because a vacuum tube is, you're dealing with energy movements in sort of gaseous states or negative gaseous state. And so I am making the assumption that you're able to bring a perspective to your work and probably a quality through the scientific method, which you can't ignore, that other people might. You look like a cool dude. Frankly, I know you're a badass nerd in there.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for Two-Rod?
It absolutely helps with, the obvious of being detail-oriented, making things, consistent, and being able to reproduce things over and over and over again. But yeah, finding the right metals and transformers and metallurgy in which components sound better, which wires sound better, direction of wire, being willing to spend 2-3 years developing a new product because you're always tinkering those little nuances. It definitely gives it a different perspective than probably some builders have.
Right. Francisco, Neural DSP seems like a magic box to most people. We don't know how it works. We just know that it is working. And I gotta tell you, as a touring musician, I was on the road during the time where the sound engineers were insisting I used a technology that wasn't ready. I was on tour and I had to use God bless the pod, but I had to use a pod 2.0 on the road with in-ear monitors before the in-ear monitors or the pod was really ready for it. And it was incredibly frustrating for me as a musician. I eventually convinced them to put a powered 10-inch speaker from our friends at Tech 21 at my feet just so I could get that response from the guitar to the amplifier and get a feedback happening. And so, but there's a major thing that happened recently. John Mayer has released a product with you. He plays your product as well. And John said that these guys figured out how to make it. He can't tell the difference when he hears it through the headphones anymore between his rig mic'd up and what's coming through not a mic'd up rig at Neural DSP. And so what is it that's happening? Sorry, my microphone I think is dying. There it is. Don't know why. Sorry for the technical issue. Francisco, I'm not asking you to give away all the magic, but tell us a little bit about what we can know about Neural DSP and how you guys think about that as the experience for the musician, the user interface and the user experience. Let's put it in technical or modern design terms with Neural.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's all about trying to help have the user a better experience, like with the instrument, making music, being creative, and trying to remove barriers that are set in between you and creativity. That's the main goal for us always. We focus a lot of attention, or we have a lot of attention to detail to sound, of course, like the quality of the products that we create need to sound incredible. That's always been our core. But at the same time, the user interface, the experience, it's all part of the same cycle. It gives feedback when you're playing guitar, when you're making music. If technology or anything that is between your guitar and the rest, all of these filters that you were talking about, it's important that they don't block you from that creative flow. So in a way, yeah, I mean, we have invested a lot of time and research. I can relate to the science part. The guys love researches and papers, and we're all quite nerds in that sense. But we have invested a lot of that time into creating our own technology where we can model things to the accuracy that maybe didn't exist before. We are very happy with what we can achieve with that technology, which is really nice. But as I said, it's all about the whole product, like the whole onboarding experience. How do you interact with the interface? How do you feel playing guitar? I mean, I can relate to what they said as well, It's not just that it sounds great. It's all about that user experience. So, yeah, I mean, we try to focus as much attention on that and how our products interact with each other, making sure that people can create music in their studio, transfer those sounds to a live scenario and a live performance of any kind, without having friction, without having, issues that interrupt that flow. So yeah, we're really happy to be able to reach people or work with people like John, Petrucci, Mayer, and some other artists that are using our products, and it's really nice to see them around the show as well. So
Great. Amazing.
Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand-built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument-friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com.
So, Larry, you made loud acoustic music kind of possible. Can you help me with my mic? Testing? Okay. Larry, you're the name that is synonymous with bringing the acoustic guitar to the stadium, to the loud clubs. And then that pickup is absolutely an experience filter because it allows you to play an acoustic guitar, but it does have a particular sound. And what's fascinating to me is, as I've thought about the icon and how we reenact the hero and the iconic sounds, is we have the acoustic guitar that was translated through the acoustic pickup, the Piezo Fishman pickup often, that we would hear on recordings, which would then filter our expectation for what we hear later on that we want to reproduce because we heard our heroes play it in that environment. And then I knew that there were people who were tracking directly with those pickups alongside with other guitars, and we had a chance for new possibilities and new sounds, not just live, but then in the studio as well. And so the history of Fishman goes back so far where I don't think that any one of us as a musician has not interacted with either playing a Fishman product or playing with someone who's playing a Fishman product. And then most people don't get more than one chance to make a truly innovative product. But your Fluence pickup, your Fluence technology has again blown possibilities wide open, and we're seeing very innovative guitar makers choosing to use yours, very innovative musicians choosing to use the Fluence pickup as well. And so I would love to hear from your perspective how you view your products, how they change the experience for the musician. Over to you.
Well, thanks so much, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be amongst royalty. And, my story is really multifaceted. I grew up loving things that go fast. Cars, motorcycles, the faster the better. But everything always broke. So I learned how to fix them, and I learned how machine tools worked. And I got a degree in mechanical engineering in the pursuit of thinking I would end up racing. And it took a turn somehow. The music lady in 5th grade came into the classroom with violins, cellos, a double bass, and said, "Would anyone like to learn how to play in an orchestra?" So I said, "I'll give it a shot." I started with violin, went to viola, ended up playing cello for many, many years, and ultimately, after I was at the university, I met some really interesting blues and jazz players, and I started playing double bass. So having the experience of fixing engines of cars and things of that nature, and understanding what worked and what didn't work, and I have a deep love for materials. I'm just fascinated with all kinds of materials. That and a passion to play music. When the orchestra lady came in, we all started, and they gave free lessons, and we played. And I remember the first time we had a concert, and the conductor went like that. The whole orchestra was so out of tune, but it was the most incredible freaking experience I ever had in my life. It was like, wow, this is something else. So I took my love of fixing things and turned it to musical instruments rather than things that go fast. And I realized that musicians, especially with string instruments, people use them in many, many different ways. And to get them to work in those environments and not get in the way, if the instrument can disappear and the music can flow through, you've really accomplished something. And my first experience in building things like that, I was playing double bass in a jazz quintet in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we're playing Miles Davis, Wayne Shorter, and mainstream stuff. And everything was cool. But they stopped tuning the piano in that particular club. And it was so frustrating that my piano player brought a Fender Rhodes in. And it got a little louder because, just because, right? And they're saying to me, and I had a mic in front of my bass, Larry, we can't hear you. You got to play Fender. And I didn't want to play Fender. I said, no, Fenders belong on cars. So I started the pursuit of building some transducers so I could be heard in that environment with those guys. And it just sort of snowballed from there. I drove them crazy for a year and a half. I had my feet painted on the floor so I could stand in the same place all the time. And I'd come in, I go, I got a new version. How's this one sound? Shut up and play the music, you know. So that became my experimental laboratory, and it's the same way. When we at Fishman approach musical instruments, we first start guitars or whatever, string instrument. We say, how's this going to be used? Is it going to be used at high volume on a stage? Is it going to be used by a very delicate fingerstyle player? Is it going to be used by Pete Townsend, who rips it to shreds every time he does a windmill? All those things have to work, and they take a different approach. We take a different approach to those designs, but we're solving problems, and that's, you know, the music is being made by the person through a vehicle, an instrument, and we don't look at these creations, although they are some of them like musical instruments in themselves when you're tuning them, but we look at what they can do to solve a problem, and the problems change all over the place. When MTV really saved acoustic guitars with the Unplugged series, they were all plugged in. It's mostly with our shit. So,
That's awesome.
So you know, look, I'm having the time of my life doing this stuff. I never will stop. And the longer you do something, and it's been 45 years to me, the more intriguing it is, but you learn a lot of lessons, and it becomes easier. And then you surround yourself with really brilliant engineers and people and developers, and they bring you to the next level, and they're curious. And, you know, we at Fishman, I have an amazing staff of engineers, and we make things. We got machine shops, we got all the stuff, and it's the biggest, best sandbox I've ever been in my life. And I love to be in the sandbox.
That's great, Larry. Thank you. Chris, I'd like to ask each one of you guys more or less the same sort of question here. What is it you think that your company does that is the most sort of underappreciated? That one little bit of knowledge that you would instill to anyone that you meet, say, you're probably not considering this, and you would really benefit from thinking about this. It makes a bigger difference than you think.
So it's a great question because it strikes me, having listened to the four of us speak, that there's a common denominator between what we're talking about, and it came out in everybody's commentary. First of all, it's about innovation, and it's about, you know, building something new. But if you listen to the answers that we all gave, it really indicates that when we're done doing what we think we can contribute to, we're happy to let our contribution sit in the background so that the musician can focus on creativity, right? And that came through in what everybody said. And I think it takes a lot of discipline and patience to appreciate that that is actually part of the end goal. And one of the ways we do that with guitar strings, and this is directly going to answer your question, but I think it applies to all of us, is a focus on quality first and foremost, because you can make something that sounds good and achieves a purpose in that moment. But if at any moment you don't feel a commitment and a reliability on that particular product, then it becomes distracting, and it actually takes away from the performance and the creativity. So that comes across in everything that I heard so far today. And I think for us, to get specifically to a product, so we've spent an awful lot of time working on tuning stability, right? Which is something that we want the users of our product to take for granted eventually, right?
Yeah.
But we know that if we can do that, that's a little contribution to the allow the musician to focus more on playing and less on tuning. And then we also talk about overall durability and strength resistance. So if you're playing guitar and you're nervous about it breaking in a moment that you're trying to be at your most creative, that's a problem that we want to solve for musicians, so that can again be taken for granted. So I think there's a lot of effort that we put into our products that don't end up on the package and don't end up in a magazine advertisement, but it's really important to us because we know we're serving the musician in a way that's, you know, a little more subtle potentially than a brand new product or a brand new innovation would look like it serves on the surface.
This space is normally reserved for brands who make stories like this possible, like D'Addario and the Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop. If your company belongs in this conversation, let's talk. We partner with brands who value craft, culture, and the quiet power of a well-placed idea.
I have that experience from being on the road. Since being a kid, I was playing your EXL 110s on most of my guitars. And at a certain point in time in my career, I started playing a lot in Eastern Europe when it was still really developing. And I took for granted you could always get D'Addario strings everywhere. That wasn't the case when I was playing in Estonia and Poland and Ukraine back 20, 25 years ago.
Before I was in charge of sales.
Before
is what
you
you're
were in
saying.
charge of
Right,
sales,
yeah,
Chris,
okay,
before
thank
you proliferated the world with D'Addario. But I would get other brands of strings that I assumed were the same quality. I'm an aggressive player. I grew up on performative music. I give the audience a show, and I couldn't get through a single set with any other brand of strings back then. Maybe things have changed, but back then it was a real problem for me. And I've done some questions about what difference a string makes with what these guitar makers are doing, and do you experiment, do you use different strings on guitars? And they came back with the same bloody boring answer every time. Like, no, we use D'Addarios because they're perfectly consistent. Like, you don't experiment, you don't try something else? No, everything else changes. I don't want that to change, they would tell me. Well, I guess I'll have to go play in a different sandbox, but I appreciate the boring answer that they just worked every time.
And I would agree with pretty much everything you said as far as the goals and stuff that we try to do at True Rock as well. And I'm very similar to Larry. You know, I build hot rods, I build my own engines, I build my own chassis. We use all vintage equipment in the shop. We still use drill presses, arbor presses. We have no CNCs. We hand build everything under one roof. And always tinkering and tweaking and playing with stuff. The 2 amps we just released this weekend, I was literally soldering on 2 days before they were here to come to the crate, and I drove them down in my car. When I play live, my amp is out of the chassis. I'm still swapping with stuff. So my crew's used to going, okay, it's ready to ship, but I want to change these 2 caps, and we want to do this. So it's always hard to show people what goes into it without revealing too much. And because we build vacuum tubes point to point, a lot of people think everything has been done, but we've developed our own transformers. So they're dual primary transformers. When you go in half power mode, you don't change phase or impedance. Our new model we just came out with has 2 sets of vacuum tubes, power tubes, one in EL84s and, you know, fixed bias, one in cathode bias with 6L6s being played at the same time. So there's so much little stuff that goes behind the scenes that people don't see that, you know, kind of sets us apart. And like you all said, reliability is, I think, number one for all of us. You know, I know you probably struggle with that with hardware now. People may be gun shy sometimes about putting electronics on there. I deal with it with vacuum tubes. People don't want to use reverb tanks on stage. Things break. So building a product that's consistent enough and solid enough that we can tour with, sounds like we all work with the same artists, you know, to have on the road and know that stuff does break, it goes down. But a big thing for us too is our stuff is very user serviceable. I build them like hot rods, and you can pop the hood on them and know where every wire goes, and we lay them out because we know stuff is going to break on the road. We know things are going to go down. We've had Pete have to have his tech open the amp up and say, okay, that wire going to pin 7, make sure it's running over to here, change that part. So that's kind of some of the stuff that we try to do to set us apart from, some companies now and just what we do.
Fantastic. Francisco?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I agree with everything they said, really. But yeah, it's like when you focus on something and you build quality products, you just want them to work. And people, I think that's part of one of the topics of, as you said, unappreciated feature, or when you get used to a product that you really like and you perform with it, you record with it, or you interface with it, and you love it and you rely on it, the moment you just forget about all the frictions or all the problems that it could cause, it just works. And I think we strive, all the companies that are here, we strive to achieve that, like something that is just serves the musician, as I said before, with as minimal friction as possible, and then the musician just gets used to it and relies on it. I think when you achieve that with a product is when it truly starts serving its purpose. And of course things go wrong, like doing complicated products, things after a certain number of units in the wild or products that you sell, some things show up that you can't foresee even with the most extensive QA testing or lab test that you might do. Things go wrong after the numbers start increasing as well. So you need to be ready to react, how to face challenge, how to adapt and continue. So yeah, that's.
I'm going to fill in the same blanks, because what you guys talk about is at the core of a lot of what Fishman is built on. We are test maniacs. We test 100%. We don't batch test. We test 100%, because at the end of the day, it seems crazy to me, but in an average year, we deliver close to 1 million systems that go in guitars from manufacturers worldwide. Not just the retail end of it, that's kind of forgiven, but we have to serve a guitar manufacturer in a way that they can reliably install our gear without it breaking during installation, and they can deliver it to their customer and out the door and working. So it's going through a whole other set of hands after it leaves us. And we have to make it bulletproof from that regard, because of language barriers and all the different countries guitars are made in. Giving the proper instruction about how to install it and so forth it's not it's not complete. It has to almost self-install in some cases, because you're working in factories that have people with turnover, and it's a challenge. I go and see factories in Asia and see what they're doing to these things, putting them in guitars, and I'm going like, damn, I never thought that would be going on. So, again, to make it seamless and lower the friction, the stuff has to work, and for us, it has to work at a level before that could sustain efficient manufacturing. If we put something in a line, a production line in a factory, and they string it up and tune it up, and it's not working, and they have to take it out and replace it, and they lost all kinds of margin right away. So that can't happen. And because of that, we test like, I can't tell you, we spend so much money and time on test equipment, but it pays us back time and time and time again. I can sleep at night knowing that there's not going to be 30,000 systems blowing up next month in Guild or Martin or whatever. So that's part of the experience. And I think it makes the products more reliable, certainly, but people can count on them. If you pick up a product that you know how it responds and the controls make sense, and the next one will be the same, because we don't like to do goofy things, because people will not be able to use the product, and it may be fantastic, but if they don't know how to use it, what good is it?
All very good, reliable answers, gentlemen. You remind me of my friend Tom when he says, we do all this incredible work that no one sees. It's like peeing in a dark brown suit. You get a warm, fuzzy feeling, but no one notices.
That's a terrible analogy, but thank you. Right before lunch too. I appreciate that. I want to add something else from a perspective of. Sorry.
Hopefully something insightful that inspires people to try something with your product that they haven't, that maybe have underestimated. So I'm going to rephrase my question, and that is, what is it people are missing about what you guys are doing that maybe would surprise them, that, oh, I didn't know it did that, or I didn't know I could have that experience?
Yeah, so that sort of ties into what I wanted to add to this conversation, which is, being in the string business where you've got a product that probably has less consideration in the purchasing process than a more significant investment of my colleagues here on the stage, where you're buying a set of guitar strings and your investment might be $10, it might be $20, but typically not much more than that. So we often say at D'Addario, it's that our biggest competitor, even though you were so kind to articulate how many manufacturers rely on our products and many brands use them and rely on them, we're very blessed to have great market share in the business, but our number one competitor when we consider about our market share position is actually complacency. And it's musicians not asking the question that you're asking me right now, which is, what else should I be considering when I'm trying to get the most out of my instrument or my playing experience in totality? And I think there is that's what we're fighting for people to start questioning and show some curiosity as to what kind of alloy difference could make an impact on the instrument that I'm playing. We make a set of strings called balanced tension, where we wrap the strings very differently than a traditional set in order to force the actual pounds per inch tension that are under your fingers to have more equilibrium across the 6 strings. And until you've played that and experienced it, you really don't know how refreshing that can be. And it's not for everybody, but I think that's what we're really challenged with, is trying to get people to be experimental with their products, and not just strings. You talked about picks before. I'm a big believer. Like, I've got a favorite guitar pick, and if I'm playing my instrument, thankfully I can play with any guitar pick that you hand me. But if it's not my favorite pick that I know gets the most out of the instrument I'm playing or the style of music that I'm playing, then right in the back of my mind, I'm ever so distracted, right, from what I'm experiencing versus what I know the potential is. And so I think when we design products, we are thinking about nuances in each of those guitar products, the capacitance of a guitar cable, the way that a strap attaches to your guitar so it won't fall off the strap button, so that that's one less thing that you have to think about. These are things that I think we're really challenged to try and ask our customer base that aren't already our customers to open up their minds to, because the danger is, a commoditization, because people think that a string is just a string.
Eli, what is it that people are maybe underestimating when they're approaching your product?
I think one of the biggest struggles is people get intimidated by him a little bit for 2 reasons. One, we build big, loud guitar amplifiers. We build 100 watts. I just did 150 watts 46550 amplifier. And there's about a time, 2016, when we launched a whole new product line, that the market was really going through small 5-10 watt amplifiers, and I'm like, that's not what I like. I'm so blessed that we don't build anything for a market. We just build stuff that we think is cool and we like it. So we've put so much time into making loud amplifiers usable at bedroom volumes, and I think that really intimidates a lot of people when they see a 100 watt amplifier. But we have our components made for us a lot of times. We have our transformers, potentiometers, all made to our specs. So you can actually, the reason why our top selling amplifiers are all 100 watt amplifiers is you can turn them down to a bedroom level and actually get a good tube tone out of it. And I think that is the biggest thing. People go, I don't need an amp that big, I play at home. Well, you could actually use them in those spaces. And then the other thing is our amps are sometimes intimidating looking because they have a lot of features on them. But I'm still a guitar player first, so it's actually laid out the way the instrument, how you would want to set up your gain stage it and stuff. So it's much more user-friendly and controllable at loud volumes than people think.
As a guitar builder and a player, you have a sense for when something's working right. That's why so many of the world's best trust D'Addario. Unmatched tone, perfect intonation, and strings made to the tightest tolerances in the industry. That reputation is no accident. It's the result of 400 years of being obsessed with quality and innovation. D'Addario, when you know, you know.
Poncho. Francisco, what should I call you? You have a big poncho.
Yes,
written on here.
the nickname comes with the name, so
All right.
whichever you prefer, it's all good.
What's that thing with Neural that you think people underestimate? Might be surprised to know they would have a great experience if they just did this thing that they don't initially think to do.
Yeah, I guess, well, we talked about it. Now lately, we have released some content about that, but when we started our journey through the modeling area, we knew that we wanted to strive for accuracy. Like we wanted things just to sound right, because when things sound correct, you just, as I said, you forget about like all these tweaking or fixing things that are going wrong. You just enjoy playing guitar, because when you design the product correctly, it just sounds great and you just play. Like your amps are incredible. It doesn't matter if people crank the mids at full or minimum. It's just a matter of taste. You can't just really go wrong. It will just work. And when we started that journey, we knew that we had to do it quickly, because we were doing software products and releasing products that were for computer first. But once we built the QC, then we realized, okay, we need to scale up this modeling part really quickly, right? So like we need to build a library for a unit that is going to be used for many people with different tastes, different guitars, different circumstances. And we invested very early into the technology that we use nowadays, which is, neural networks and how to train. We have our own robot, and we, designed that robot in order to twist the knobs, turn the knobs, gather the data, train a model, and that's how we model analog gear. And the beauty of that, I was telling you off stage, is that we can get any pedal, any amp, if it's the one that you like, we can get it sounding exactly like that without having to go to a schematic or study the ideals, because the ideals are not always translate as true. Like a tube amplifier, as of course or pedals and any analog gear really has a margin of chaos, which is kind of like the beauty of it. And we love that too, so we put extra emphasis into getting those characters right. And I think people notice, once you play through one of our products, it just sounds right, it feels right. And I think that not everybody knows how much attention we put into that technology. That is what kind of, it's our standard today, but it was a long and painful path. It wasn't something that just, worked from one night to the other. It was years of iteration, of getting better, improving performance, like as aliasing, latency, accuracy, frequency response, dynamic response, just like how can we get closer and closer so we remove that barrier of, oh, I'm using a digital product, it's not an analog thing. We are here to, as I said, help creativity and try to remove that from the mind. So yeah, I think that mostly is the way that we do things, are our modeling techniques maybe that are not so popular, or I don't know, I wouldn't say underestimated, but maybe we are not so open because it's a little bit more internal tooling, right? So yeah, I guess maybe that's one of the things.
Okay. And Larry, as we look to wrap things up here, you're going to get the last word. And so I would like it if I can even direct you a little closer in here, because I think that your Fluence technology is something that is quite underestimated in general. It's another rectangle box under the strings, and it really is quite different than the technologies that have preceded it. And so you can choose something else, but I'd like to hear you talk about the Fluence a little bit.
Well, Fluence it's a good place to end, because we were focusing on acoustic instruments for 35 years. And everyone said, well, why don't you make electric guitar pickups? And I said, Seymour Duncan's been at it his whole life. He's doing a damn good job. And Rob Turner at EMG's got his thing. And, Larry DiMarzio, I said, there's really nothing I can offer right now that I can think of. And I would just be pissing in the swimming pool that everyone's swimming in for a little market share. And that's not fun. So when I stumbled on this notion of building a planar stacked layer of coil. And the technology that made it available is, printed circuit technology is advancing. It's getting smaller and this and so we started with a 48 layer printed circuit coil, and it was a bitch, but that's what's influenced pickups. And then again, it was solving problems. We used to wind, and we still do, wire wound acoustic guitars, sound hole pickups, and they're all different. The wire stretches from when the temperature is different in the building, the tensioner is grabbing, it's crazy. And I know all the great companies that make standard technology pickups are fighting that all the time. So I thought, okay, this is going to solve that problem out of the gate. So the consistency is incredible. The matching for a humbucking pickup is as perfect as it's ever been. Same inductance, same DCR, we're good to go. But in the process, we learned that, okay, the old way of building and bringing a pickup to life was wind, test, change the magnet, unwind. Every time you put more winds on it, it got louder, but the sound changed, and it's crazy. Not every now and then you would buy a PAF or something, and that one sounds great, and then you buy another one, it sounds awful. And when it comes to guitars, the wood's always different. Thank God your strings are consistent. The wood's different. Everything's different. If the pickup that you think you have is different, no wonder they do so much drugs and drinking, man. This drives people crazy, You never know what to get. So we wanted consistency, but along with consistency came an opportunity to innovate the way they sounded in a very efficient way. We voice them for artists in real time. We plug what we call our drone in, and we go into our digital voicing system, and we know what basic shape the second order low pass filter and where it's going to be. We know basically what after talking to them, we want something like this, so we know where to start. And I say, what's your favorite pickup that you have at home now that you love and feels great, but you may want it to sound a little different? That way I get an insight into the magnetics. You want a pickup with a really sharp responding, a ceramic pickup because it's really tight and it can get punched out. Or do you want some loosey-goosey, degaussed Alnico, or you get there. So you get the sound, you get the magnetics right, sit them down, they play, and we adjust in real time. You go, give me a little more of this. Well, what is this? I want it a little crunchier down here. Then you got to figure out what crunchy is. But once you get there, we can dial it in, and they'll go, you hit that magic moment, and artists know when it's happening. They go, wow, right there. We stop the machine, we say print, then we get all the data out of the digital voicing thing, and then I give it to one of my genius filter designers, and we reproduce it in analog, and we build it in-house. We got our own very modern SMT stuff going on in-house. We build it, and we build multiple voices into it that are there forever. And it's all analog, runs on a battery, let's go. So that's the Fluence story. And it came because there were problems that had to be solved, and that kind of got us going on it. And once we built the first one, I said, guys, I think we might have something here. Let's see where we can go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Larry. Folks, as we wrap this up here today, I want to thank our panel, who's been absolutely fantastic. The influence you guys have, the support you give to the guitar makers, to the guitar players, to the rest of the industry around the world. We couldn't do what we do without this group of people here on the stage today. And so thank you so much for Chris Griffiths from D'Addario, Eli Lester from 2 Rock Divided by 13, Francesco Cresp from Neural DSP, Larry Fishman. Let's give him a round of applause, folks. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Life with Strings Attached. If today's conversation meant something to you, consider passing it on. These stories find their place through the people who share them. A new episode comes out every Friday, right here, wherever you're listening. I'm Jamie Gale, and thanks for listening to Life with Strings Attached.